Thank you everyone for joining us and welcome. My name is Daniel Garcia. I'm the manager of graduate program administration here at the Creative School. And we're really excited to welcome you here for the Master of Journalism information session. Hopefully we'll provide a lot of information, answer your questions, and go over the program so you understand a little bit more about how it works and what you're going to do if you decide to apply and come and join us in the Creative School. And so we'll get started with that. Just a couple things. First, if you don't mind keeping your microphones muted just while we do the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session at the end, so you'll be able to unmute and ask as many questions as you like. In terms of video feeds and cameras, if you're comfortable with it, please turn your video on. It's always nice to be able to see who we're speaking to, and rather than just a bunch of black squares on the screen. It's always nice. Thank you for that. And lastly, feel free to throw in any questions you may have in the chat in the bottom of your screen. We'll have a couple of program administrators here to help answer those questions, and we'll also try to answer them at the end via live on the call as well. So let's get started. And firstly, I want to because we're located in Toronto, I want to go over the land acknowledgement, and this is the Toronto Metropolitan University land acknowledgement, but I would encourage you to explore and research and learn a little bit of the land where you live, so you understand who lived there before you and sort of the history about it. Always good to know about that, where again to be able to relate a little more in the location that you are. But again, I'm going to read just the Toronto Metropolitan University version right now. Toronto is in the dish with one spoon territory. The dish with one spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. And again, with that spirit, we welcome you to the Master of Journalism information session. And let's just again, an overview of what we're going to do today. It's going to be quick welcome introductions, which we just did, and then we're going to go briefly over the program overview, see what the program is all about, and then finish off with some admissions and funding information, and then of course the Q&A session. And so to start with that, I want to welcome the graduate program director for the program, Marcia Barber. She's joining us today. And Marcia, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then share the floor to you. So you're welcome to introduce yourself.
So hi, everyone. Lovely to see you. And I see actually there are a couple of familiar names already, which means that you attended the grad fair. So what I'm going to say now, you're probably already familiar with. So bear with me. And for the rest of you, this will be new information. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about how TMU journalism is different. I guess the first thing is we're very hands-on. So if you look into other grad programs, they tend to be more theoretical. They tend to be more communications theory based. So you'll see that, not with all of them, but with many of them. We like to get you out there reporting as quickly as possible. So the first thing I would mention is the hands-on aspect of the program. Also, we are in Toronto. So excuse me, my throat's a little dry today. We are in Toronto, so that means you do have access to the resources that this city offers and the media resources that the city offers. So I think that's one of the things that possibly sets the program apart. We do have a good internships program, which means when you're doing internships, which is an actual course in between the 2 years, so in the summer of your second year, we've had students doing internships at the Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, CBC, CTV. Some people are really interested in online and digital, so they've found really good internships in those areas. These are unpaid internships, but they're really good in terms of getting a sense of the industry and your fit within the industry. Also, during the final year, you'll work at one of the school's 2 publications. You may have seen them. And if you haven't, I suggest you just Google them, have a look at them. But the news publication is called On the Record. And that's a digital TV and newspaper platform. And we've got the Review of Journalism, which is a magazine. It's a very well-respected magazine within the industry as well. So you have working journalists who will look at the Review of Journalism and will read those stories with interest, which is great because it puts your name out there. So I'm going to screen share for a minute and just give you a sense of the courses that you'd actually take if you apply and then decide to enroll in the program. So let me screen share here. You come into the program and the first course you take is covering the city. And that's a course that gets you out covering the city, doing some actual reporting. You take reporting and data methods for journalists. It's what it sounds like. Urban politics and society for journalists. You start to think in terms of the implications of what it means to be a journalist. How do politics fit into that? How does covering urban society fit into that? And then law and ethics for journalists. Then you go into winter, producing the news, a digital journalism studio for those of you who are interested in online journalism and digital journalism. It's a lab course where you're doing hands-on digital journalism. Narrative journalism, where you're working with magazine reporting and magazine journalism. And innovation and entrepreneurship in journalism, where you're imagining what the field could be. And in the summer, as I mentioned, you'll be doing an internship. So you'll be working in a journalism institution. And also online, you'll be starting work on your master's research project. And I'll explain what that is in a minute. And then you go into the fall of second year, and that's where you're in a masthead. And these are our advanced courses. So you're either in the newsroom masthead, where you're covering daily news in a number of different media, or you're doing a narrative masthead, which is magazine journalism. And this is where you get to take electives. So if you're in the magazine masthead, you choose one elective. And if you're in the newsroom masthead, you can choose up to 3. And we've got electives like TV documentary. And I should mention, that one's really near and dear to my heart because I was a TV documentary worker, producer with the National, and I specialize in investigative documentaries with the National. And I should mention that most of your instructors have a very direct line to the industry. They've worked in the industry, most of them for many years. There's investigative reporting, health and science. You can read what the other ones are, but there are a wide range of electives. And then you go into winter. You can take more electives in the winter, and basically you're focused on finishing your master's research project. Now, this major research project, master's research project, is a work of journalism. And the great thing about that is you're working on a piece of journalism that you can publish or you can broadcast. That is the goal. And really the sky's the limit. If there's something that you're interested in and you want to do it, for example, as a magazine piece, that's great. You work with a supervisor and you do that. Or if you want to do it as a TV documentary or a podcast, you work with a supervisor, you do that. Or it could be an online project, same thing. So lots of scope there. And there'll be lots of time for questions about all of this afterwards. One thing I'll mention in terms of a successful application, in your cover letter, the cover letter is really important. What we want to hear about is your passion for journalism. So How did you come by this passion? And what kind of journalism do you consume? Do you, what kind of TV shows do you like to watch? What kind of magazines or newspapers do you like to read? So just talk to us in that letter and give us a sense of why you're so interested in journalism and going into journalism. And I would say too, even though I believe it currently says that the portfolio is optional, you will be at a huge advantage if you have a portfolio, because the way we look at that is you've shown a prior commitment to journalism. So whether you've worked for a campus newspaper or a campus radio station, whether you've done a podcast, whatever you've done, that's really interesting to us. And if you haven't done anything, give us an example of what it would look like if you had done something. So even if it hasn't been published or broadcast, find something to put in the portfolio, because that really is important to the admissions decision. And again, there'll be lots of time for questions afterwards, but I'll throw it back to you, Daniel.
Okay, so thank you, Marcia, for all that information. Really great. I'm going to go briefly just over the admissions process, a little bit about the requirements and some of the funding opportunities. And then so let's get started just with where are we sort of part of. And so the Master of Journalism program is part of the Yates School of Graduate Studies as a faculty that manages anything and everything in the university that has to do with graduate studies. And we're also part of the Creative School, which is where the School of Journalism lives. So basically you're part of two faculties when you become a student here. Now, the main reason I bring this up is because a lot of the information that has to do with admissions, funding, scholarships, a lot of that nice important information you'll find in the Yates School of Graduate Studies website, or YSGS. So make sure you write this link down, torontomu.ca/graduate, because a lot of the information will be there, including, for example, some general admission inquiries, some questions about like you're trying to apply in the online system through the portal and you can't, or trying to upload your documents, you're having issues, or not sure about your transcripts or how to submit them. Those kinds of things, you can reach out to grad help at torontomu.ca and they'll be able to help you. On the other side, if you have questions more about the program, more specific questions about maybe the requirements specifically for the Master of Journalism program, like Marcia just described, the portfolio, or maybe the written statement, or things that are a little more on the what about the program, academic, things like that, that's where you want to use the mj@torontomu.ca, and that's be one of us here answering your questions, and we can speak more about the specifics of the program. All right, so just wanted to make that differentiation for you guys, so you understand sort of who to contact whenever you need to do that. And actually, with that in mind, I just quickly want to sort of say a quick shout out to our two program administrators here today. We have Elaine Nee and Tanisha Boyd here. And if you want to say a quick hello or just wave your hands, there we go. Just so that you can put a face to the name of who's going to help you when you send emails to the account. Now you know we have two wonderful people here helping you here. All right. I want to go through the application process. There's a couple important things. First thing, the deadlines. First consideration deadline is January 19th. And this is extremely important for any domestic applicant. You should definitely consider applying by January 19th or before if you can, because that will give you, in a sense, priority, just because we'll be reviewing all the applications that come in right shortly after. And so if your application comes later, you'll have to wait for a second round or a third round of review. So make sure that you apply by January 19th. For any international students, we recommend even earlier, December 10th as a preferred deadline, mainly because for international students, you'll have to apply for your study permits and visas and all those different things, and that takes a lot of time. So we want to make sure that we receive your application as soon as possible so that we can respond to and send offers again as soon as possible as well. So again, preferred deadline for international students is December 10th. For domestic students is January 19th. And just a quick note for international students, if you can apply by December 10th, because it's 3 weeks from now, you can still apply a little bit later, but you can definitely try to apply between December 10th and before January 19th, just to make sure that we can receive your applications on time. In terms of the application process, it's a two-step process. So step one is to submit your application via the Ontario University's Application Center, or OUAC, and pay the application fee. This is basically just to let the Ontario University's center that you want to come to Toronto University, to Toronto Metropolitan University, to the Master of Journalism program. When you do this part of the application, all you really need to do is your information, your background, your academic previous degrees and things like that, as well as any potential supervisors, or not potential supervisors, and your referees for your letters of recommendation. So those are the kind of things you'll need in step one, such as your, again, personal information, background of academics, any potential supervisors, and who's going to do your letters of recommendation and their contact information. As soon as you submit this step one, the OUAC will then contact the university, will contact us in admissions, and it basically lets us know that you want to apply. At that point, usually takes between 2 or 3 business days, sometimes around that time, you will get then an email from graduate admissions letting you know how to upload the rest of your documents. So this will be like your statement of interest, your CV, your portfolio, all those different things come in step number 2. Keep in mind, it does take, like I said, 2 to 3 business days. So don't leave the step 1 portion until January 19th, because then you won't get your link until January 25th or 24th or somewhere in there. So make sure if you're interested in applying, you can start at step 1 now, and then just wait until you have everything ready and submit the step 2 later on. But at least you'll have your link and access already set up to submit your portfolio and your statement of interest and all those different things, right? So don't leave it to last minute, basically, is the bottom line. And keep in mind, is again, that 2-step process. All right. We'll go through those questions in a little bit, but if you have, I see one in the chat. So which dates should international students currently studying in Canada follow? I would still suggest for any international student to try to apply by December 10th, and certainly before January 19th, even if you're already in Canada, because it will depend on your study permit. And unfortunately, on our end, we don't really deal with the study permits too much. And so we just want to give you as much time as possible to be able to apply. So if you have your application ready, I would say apply now if you can, and then we'll start reviewing after January 19th. So any time in between those two, it's great. Thank you for your question, Mariela. Okay, admission requirements. So for step 2, this is the list of sort of the admission requirements for the program. The standard academics will be the 4-year bachelor, honor bachelor degree. Minimum GPA is at 3.0 out of 4.33, or a B equivalent. That's the GPA here at Toronto Metropolitan University. But again, admissions will take a look and review your transcripts if you study somewhere else, and they'll do the equivalency checks on their tables after you submit your application. The rest of the items, the statement of interest, resume, letters of recommendation, portfolio submission, those are the things you're going to be uploading later on, and step 2 once you get your link. I won't go individually into each of the requirements. You can ask me some questions afterwards. I'll just go briefly. The statement of interest, the main goal of this is for you to let the admissions committee know who you are, what you like to do, what is your research, who you're interested in working with, why the MJ program, why you're a good candidate. So as much information as you can put in there to support and show the admissions committee that you're a good candidate and that you're interested in journalism, that's what you want to put in there. Obviously, very important, writing, grammar, spelling. Right. I mean, I don't have to say that, but I'd like to say it anyway, just in case. It is a journalism program, so you make sure all of those things are double checked and triple checked if you can. Your resume, same thing. You want to make sure it highlights your experiences, what you've done, everything in the past that supports that statement of interest. Think of your application as a whole bucket of things. So each of those pieces inside should complement each other. So your resume should complement your statement of interest by showcasing what you did before, what you volunteered, where you worked, where you've, what other maybe prizes you've or contests you submitted to, things like that. And then the letters of recommendation, we usually require 2 letters of recommendation. Prefer an academic letter. That's probably from an instructor or professor from previous education. But if you maybe left school a while ago, or maybe you didn't keep in touch with some of your professors, you could potentially use a professional letter. Now, the very important thing to do here is make sure you tell your referees to include as much information as possible in the letter about you. Not just like saying, yes, this, John Smith is a great candidate for the program. Done. You want something a little more. You want something, why is John Smith a great candidate? What are the skills? How do you guys work together? What kind of assignments or things that they saw in you in terms of the skills and abilities to be able to complete the program, right? So that's also why we usually recommend an academic reference, because instructors and professors usually have written this before, and they can provide more information in the area of the academic side of things. So if you have to go to with a professional academic, professional reference, sorry, you want to make sure you let them know, please write as much information as possible. If you want to, have a coffee with them, meet up with them, talk to them about your interest in journalism, what is that you're going to submit in your application. Feel free to share your statement of interest, all these different things. As much information as you provide them, the easier it's going to be for them to be able to include that and to talk about that in their letter. Okay, and with that in mind, of course, give them as much time as possible. Don't write them on a Friday and tell them it's due on the Monday, because you're probably not going to get a good reference. Everybody's busy these days, so you're going to give them as much time as possible. Reach out to them now, even if you're not sure if you're applying, just in case you decide to apply. And then again, provide them with as much time and information as you can. And then lastly, portfolio submission. Marcia already mentioned sort of like the details and requirements for the portfolio, so I won't go over them again, but make sure that you if you can, please submit a portfolio. It does make a big difference in your application. Marcia, before I move on, is there anything that you want to add in any of this?
No, I think that just about covers it. Yeah, that's pretty comprehensive. So thanks. Yeah. Perfect.
Sounds good. All right, so I'm going to move into funding briefly, so you understand a little bit of the funding opportunities that are available at the university. So the first awards we sort of usually mention is the admissions awards. And a lot of the admissions awards don't require an application. So you basically, by submitting your application into the program, the admissions committee and the review committee will automatically consider you for these 3 awards you see on the screen. That is the Toronto Metropolitan Graduate Fellowship, with a value ranging between $2,000 and $6,000 per year. The Toronto Metropolitan Graduate Development Award, again, between $2,000 and $6,000. And then we have usually 1 award per program, valued at $12,000, which is the Ontario Graduate Fellowship, or OGF, or Ontario Graduate Funding. And so this one, we usually is, again, awarded based on your admissions application. So that's also why it's very important to make sure your application is as good as possible, because it not only gets you into the program, it also gets you automatic funding to help you pay for your studies. Okay, and all of these awards for between domestic and international, usually the TMGF or the graduate fellowship is for domestic, and then the graduate development award might be for international. But again, we'll provide awards to most of the students in the program when they come in, and the amounts are decided usually with your offer letter. So you'll get a information about the funding you get provided once you get an acceptance letter from admissions. Okay. Other program awards, we do have several awards, 5 or 6 awards in the program. These ones are things, awards that we created based on donations from industry, based on institutions wanting to provide money for students to develop themselves. And so these ones are usually provided throughout the academic year. Once you're already accepted as a student, we usually have two runs of awards, or call for submissions, once in the fall, once in the winter, and then you get your funding accordingly just shortly after. And then the values for those, they vary between $1,000 all the way to, I think, 4 or 5, the bigger ones. And again, but we'll provide those via email once you're already a student in the program. There are also, more words, external scholarships or external awards. 2 of the big ones I want to mention right now. First one is the Ontario Graduate Scholarship. And we have our own version of that, the Toronto Met Graduate Scholarship. These are $15,000 for a 1-year award. Basically, with these ones, we'll take your applications from admissions. The program administrators here will review and check your GPA calculations and make sure that you meet the minimum requirement, which is an A- in each of the last 2 years of completed study. And then we will notify eligible applicants sometime in February or March to submit the application. The application on your end is very simple because it's really just a form letting us know that you want to apply, and then we'll use your admissions application together, and that will be what's going to be sent to the review committee for the OGS and the TMGS scholarships. Okay. And again, it's $15,000. So really important that you guys keep that in mind if you apply. So keep an eye out for an email. And again, around February, March, if you applied, asking you about the OGS scholarship application submission. Okay. The other one is the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada Graduate Scholarship. That's a long one. SHRC for short. This one is a $17,000 award for 1 year. This one is only for domestic applicants. Same requirement in terms of A- average GPA in the last 2 years to complete the study. Now, the reason why I bring this one up is because the deadline is coming up on December 1st. Now, the tricky part with that is you're basically applying to the scholarship before you apply to the program, or even before you get accepted into the program, and that's why it's a funny timeline. That's because this scholarship is not run by the university; it's run by the government, right? So you want to make sure that if you're interested and you know you're going to be applying to the program and you meet the requirements, just submit your application to the SHRC scholarship. Worst case scenario, you change your mind, you don't apply to the program, or or even if you don't get accepted, at least you submit your application for the scholarship, right? And again, it's a good amount of money, pretty much covers the domestic tuition. So if you're interested, I highly encourage you to apply because we are a 2-year program. Anybody who gets accepted in first year will have a second chance to apply for their second year in the program as well. All right, so just keep that in mind. But again, ideally, you'll apply to both and maybe get it twice. I don't know. We'll see. And lastly, these are like an external scholarships. And lastly, the other place to find more information about funding is the Graduate Studies website, where basically we have a big giant list of scholarships that are not necessarily run. Some of them are run by university, but some of them are external as well. So I highly encourage you to visit that and just basically go through the different options there. There's tons of scholarships. You as the applicant are the best person to know whether or not you qualify, because the requirements vary between academic background, what your research is, maybe your personal cultural background, again, a whole bunch of different areas that again, we wouldn't necessarily know, but you should be able to go in there, take a quick look, go through all the scholarships, see which ones you meet, and you can apply. They even have a calendar, so you can subscribe to the calendar, and then that way you don't miss any of the deadlines coming up for application. Okay. Again, we'll leave the link in there and we'll maybe put it in the chat afterwards, but this will give you sort of an idea of funding. In that same page, by the way, you also find links to teaching assistantships, research assistantships, graduate assistantships, a whole bunch of ships in there that basically allow you to work while you're in school and also, get some extra funding and also experience, of course, because you're now in a master's program. So you'll be working with undergraduate students, again, just building up your academic background and your teaching experience as well. Okay. Okay, so I think that's good for now in terms of a lot of the presentation part of things. So I just encourage you right now just to write down the email. This is our contact email for the program, mj@torontomu.ca. And I'm going to now stop sharing my screen, and basically we'll open up the question and answer period. So if you have any specific questions, by all means, just unmute yourself and ask, or raise your hand, put it in the chat, and we are all here to answer it. I see one on the chat. Thank you, Matthew. Hi there. Would a published academic paper regarding the history of a specific journalist be suitable for a portfolio?
Yeah, that's a good question. We prefer to see works of journalism. If you don't have works of journalism, you can do that. But I would say it's better if you have works of journalism, and then you just put a note saying, this also attests to my interest in journalism, so I am including an academic paper. I hope that's okay. You can do that as something supplementary. Does that answer it? Yeah, I saw you nodding, so I assume that answers it. Okay.
Oh, thank you, Marcia. Let's see if there's any other questions there.
And there are, I have to say, no stupid questions. You know this. So if there's anything that's even kind of tickling at the back of your mind, probably it's something other people are wondering about. So this is from Molly. Okay, I'm just looking in the chat, and so is Daniel.
I'm going to read one for you, Marcia, from Molly. When applying, are admissions looking at your overall GPA or your program-specific GPA?
That's more one for you.
That's one for me, yes. So in terms of the application requirements, the admissions will look at your overall GPA, but they usually take a look at the equivalent of the last 2 years of study. So that might look slightly different depending on how long you took to complete your degree, or depending on the degree you have, the number of credits. So all of that calculation happens at graduate admissions. But basically they'll take a look and they'll average out the equivalent of the last 2 years of study, and that will be the what we call it, the admissions GPA that we use for to get you into the program. Okay.
And the next one, approximately how many portfolio submissions does the program prefer? That's from Michelle. Focus on quality. I would say it's a good idea to have at least a couple. There's no limit really, but don't just put in a lot because you have a lot. Think about, say, your very best one. So if you have 3 that are really strong, that's better than, say, putting in 6 where a couple of them are just kind of, not as strong. And Matthew, you said unpublished journalistic content is still acceptable. Yeah, I said that if you don't have published and if you don't have broadcast journalism, then you can basically say, well, this is what it would have looked like. This is what I would have submitted. So we can just get a sense of what you might have done. And these days, the definitions of journalism are so fluid in a way. So if you have a blog, is that an example of journalism? Well, it wouldn't have been a few years ago, but maybe now, if it's an interesting blog and it's well written, you could include something like that too as an example of journalism if you don't have more traditional examples to put in your portfolio. How long is the summer semester? Yeah, it's the same as every other semester. So it's, I guess it's 13 weeks. I'm asking Daniel, yep, because there isn't a reading week, is there, in the summer?
13 weeks, usually starts in the beginning of May and it goes to basically almost the end of July. Okay. And sometimes, and it does depend on, because in the summertime first there's the internship, right, Marcia? So sometimes it extends a little bit depending on when you start your internship as well.
Yeah, so we're talking approximately with the reading week, 12 weeks of classes, 1 week of reading week. So the same as the fall semester, the same as the winter semester. How strict is the 500-word suggestion for the personal statement? We're not sitting there counting words. So I wouldn't say, it's not a science, but I would say, don't go crazy, because especially in some forms of journalism, like broadcast journalism, people are encouraged to be fairly concise. So I wouldn't go much over it, but no, it's not as if you'd be penalized if you happen to go over it. Just to clarify, that's a question for you, I guess, Daniel, from Molly.
Back about the GPA, yes. So I'm not going to read out loud for the recording, but yes, just to clarify, would they be looking at my GPA with just my undergraduate major classes, or would they look at the GPA I have with electives included? It basically, would they look at both, at everything? They'll look at all the classes. They don't necessarily split electives versus required courses, or if you did a minor, for example, they will look at the overall, all the classes, generally speaking. This is specifically for the calculation for the admissions GPA. For other things, sometimes the in terms of just looking at classes and stuff like that, the review committee might look at your experience, but at your courses, but that is more for experience rather than actual calculation of GPA. So yeah.
And Praise, are you asking the question that you've got in the chat? Maybe go ahead and ask your question, Praise.
Hello. I had a few questions. I wanted to know, for the internship, how do you place students?
Well,
No, sorry. On the website, it says that the School of Journalism places students in certain places and supervises them. So I wanted to know how they do that.
We have an internships coordinator, and she's very good, and it's her job to work with students to find a placement. So usually what happens is she'll meet with you. She'll try and get a sense of where you're interested in working. So you have to meet her halfway and let her know what your interests are. And then she has contacts at various media outlets. So she will then take the next step, contact them, and arrange for a placement. Some of the internships are competitive. So for example, the CBC internship, more people apply for it than get it. So that tends to be competitive. Other internships, I mean, if you're interested in Vice, there might be fewer people interested in Vice or Al Jazeera or something that's not absolutely mainstream media. So that's something that you discuss with her, but you work together to figure out what the best placement is. And you said you had a few questions.
So how long is the internship?
It's usually, I believe it's usually, and Daniel will correct me here, it's a course. I believe it's 6 weeks, but I know some of our internships have gone longer. Daniel, do you want to jump in on that if you're aware of others?
Yeah, and I think it depends also to where the internship is and how many hours you can actually work by each week. Because I think they do it more based on the number of hours. So maybe I think it's 120 to 150 hours, give or take. But again, that gets adjusted. So for example, if you're only working 5 hours a week, that might take you longer than if you're working 20 hours per week. And so that gets adjusted based on your discussions with the instructor, so you can make sure that because you're also doing, I believe, one class during that period of time. So you got to make sure that you work with, make sure you meet your academic requirements in terms of your class, but also are able to work at the institution or the placement that you chose. And their schedule may also determine how many hours you can actually work, right? So it's a combination of those three things that you'll have to sort of determine. So that's why we usually say keep the summer open, because that'll give you more flexibility. And that once you know your internship, your placement, and you make all this scheduling coordination things, then you'll be able to determine, okay, yes, my internship will be, I don't know, 6 weeks or 12 weeks or a combination or somewhere in between, right? So it's an interesting, I think it's a good question, because it has a lot of pieces to be able to make it exactly how many weeks it will last.
Mm-hmm. And Praise, did you have other questions?
For now it's okay, but I think I just wanted to clarify that you said the school helps in placing students, because I know there's some times where students have to go find where to intern by themselves, and that might take longer or might be more difficult.
Mm-hmm, for sure. We do that in our undergrad program. In our undergrad program, students have to find their own internships. But in the grad program, there is a specific instructor, coordinator who helps students with that. Molly, you had another question in the chat, and then we'll get to you, Linda. Is there a specific type of journalism preferred in this program as well as in admissions? I'll answer that one first. No, you have to be so light on your feet these days in terms of the journalism you do. So unless you're working at the national level, very few people do just one kind of journalism. So no, there is no preferred kind of journalism. Sorry about that. It's been this kind of day. And what was the second part? They're all weighed the same. So we see you're really a talented photojournalist. That's impressive. If we see you've also done a second kind of journalism, we look at that as well. So really it's up to you to decide, how do you put your best foot forward? What is the best representation of what you can do? And you put that into your portfolio. Okay, does that answer the question, Molly? Yeah. And Linda, what would you like to ask?
I was wondering for in the internships and in the classes, how in depth do you get into each, I don't want to say like discipline or subject within journalism?
It's a really good question. It really depends on the classes. In some classes, not many, but in some, you will be sitting with undergrad students. So we do have classes where MJs and undergrads take the same course. The only difference being that MJs might have, will have one additional assignment that's more appropriate for a graduate level course, but you are sitting with undergrad students in the same course. How in depth? It varies so much from course to course. I mean, if you're taking a course like law and ethics, you get fairly deeply into law and ethics. If you're taking a lab course in digital journalism, you're dealing with a very technical professional course in digital journalism. So we cover the bases, and in terms of depth, it's really hard to measure. I guess it depends on your background and where you're coming from, whether you would see it as in-depth or, you know, a little bit broader based. Linda, does that, do you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, that was really good. No, and then for the internship itself, do you find that students get the opportunity to really do journalism? Because I think the stereotype about internships is that
Yeah.
you get coffee.
Get coffee?
Yeah.
It really depends on the place. It depends on two things. It depends on the place, and it depends on the initiative that you take. So that's something to discuss with the coordinator. I think she'll be aware of some places that are more likely to give you less to do. But usually, if that's the case, they're struck off the internships list, because we really are looking for places where you get to practice journalism. So we've heard of not too many examples of people just having to get coffee. And then I can think of, I don't even remember the place, but I know that did happen once. And I know that the internships coordinator followed up on that. But the big thing about the internships is the onus is on you. So even if you're in a very junior role, the onus is on you to say, can I pitch you some story ideas, you know, after you've been there for a few days? Can I sit in on the story meeting? I have some ideas that may work. And we do find, I should mention related to that, that the people who do well in the program are the people who have a real hunger for it, because as you know, it is a competitive field. And you can't really wait for people to, no one's going to give you the opportunities when you do the internships, for example. You're going to have to stand out. You're going to have to take that opportunity and go beyond what other people are doing. So at night, when you're not doing the internship, think of story ideas that you can pitch the next day, or if they're having trouble getting somebody, when they're trying to put a panel together, if you can think of maybe a more innovative way of reaching out to that person, or you happen to know somebody who knows somebody. I think the kinds of people who do best in the field are usually people who are really curious and really hungry for it, and you sort of really driven. So I can't emphasize enough how much you have to take those opportunities and run with them. You really do get out of it what you put into it. Addie's question: any student can apply for CBC internships, but again, it's competitive. So you apply to the internships coordinator, and then she'll probably go to faculty and say, okay, this is the list of people who are interested. Who are the strongest candidates on the list? Because we want to send people to CBC we believe will thrive at CBC. So there is an element of that. With many of the other internships, as I mentioned, you can pretty much walk in. But for the more competitive internships, there is some collaboration with faculty. So, you know, it means the people who really put a lot into the courses, who meet the deadlines, that kind of thing, they're the people more likely to be put forward for those kinds of internships.
Thank you.
There's no such thing, praise, as a part-time MJ. In answer to your question, it's a 2-year program, and it's not, I don't want to say 100% because I know there've been a couple of extenuating circumstances, Daniel, but in general, it is a full-time program.
I can jump in a little bit. It is only a full-time program. Like we don't have a part-time option. In certain circumstances, students sometimes need extra time to complete the program, and sometimes we're able to accommodate that if maybe it takes an extra semester or maybe an extra 2 semesters. I think the policy for this particular program, you have up to 3 years to complete total. The one thing to keep in mind is in graduate studies, tuition is based on a flat fee. It's not like undergrad, at least at TMU. It's not like undergrad where you basically pay based on how many courses you're taking. In grad studies, it's basically a flat fee, and it's divided into 3 payments: fall, winter, and spring. Okay, so regardless if you're taking 1 course, 4 courses, 3 courses, you sort of pay the same because you're paying a yearly fee, so you pay the same fee. So if you decide, you know what, this semester I can't take my 4 courses, which is my regular course load, I can only take 3. If you get the permission from Marcia and from your supervisor, that's probably fine. But then in order to take that course, you have to come back a full other semester whenever that course is offered again, which just means an extra tuition payment. So just keep that in mind. And because the way the curriculum is designed, a lot of the courses that are offered in the fall are only offered in the fall. So if you decide, you know what, I only take 3 of those courses, the 4th one, you'll probably have to wait until the following fall. And the part that you have to basically discuss with Marcia and your supervisor is, if I don't take this course, will that stop me from taking courses in the winter or courses in the spring or courses in the next year, and so on and so forth. So it does sometimes tend to somewhat like a stepping stone to the next courses. So you have to be careful with those kinds of things if you decide to take a little bit slower and extend your degree. It has happened, and it is kind of possible, because you have to be mindful of those 2 things. Again, one is tuition, and the other one is which courses you can actually not take and take them later without affecting your how you can move forward in the next steps of the degree. So is there any more questions? Are we missing anything on the chat? Just feel free to raise your hand or let us know so that we don't miss you, because I know there's a lot of stuff in here. Otherwise, I can tell you a quick little anecdote that I actually heard from one of the students about the internship, which was they applied for one of the big internships. I can't remember if it was a CBC or one of the bigger ones, and they didn't get it. But they actually ended up a smaller organization. The thing they said is the advantage to that was they actually got to do bigger stories, where maybe at the CBC we're going to be able to do smaller little things because they already have obviously the full-time people that are doing the stories. By going into sometimes smaller version of that, they will actually be able to pitch stories, go out there. So in a sense, a little bit more practice. So for those of you who are kind of worried that like, oh, I really want to go into this big thing over here, just keep your options open, because there's a lot of opportunities, right? The important thing that you're taking here is, like Marcia said, is you get the best when you do your best, right? So make sure you keep that in mind, because there is a lot of things. And this is probably a couple of years old, this little anecdote, but I remember we're talking to the students, and that was one of the things they mentioned at one of the talks, actually one of the other info sessions we had. Praise, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry, this is just a clarification in terms of funding. You mentioned that when we do apply to the program, we're automatically considered for funding, and then the school then lets us know if we are approved, or do we have to or how does that work?
Yeah, so for the admissions funding, you'll get, so you apply, we'll review it, your application, the review committee will sort of determine the funding. And as soon as you get, if you get accepted to the program, as soon as you get that letter of acceptance, you'll also see a funding amount. So for example, you say, congratulations, you've been accepted to the program. That'd be page 1. This is all the requirements you need to complete. And then page 2 will be something like, and the program has committed, $3,000 worth of funding, or 2 or 6 or whatever it is that they've decided, and all of that being there. If there's any other extra additional funding, like the Ontario Graduate Scholarship or the Ontario Graduate Fellowship or any other TA-ships, GA-ships, things like that, that will usually come in a separate letter. Or via email to let you know that, hey, you need to apply for this scholarship because you qualify, or if you've been granted let's say a GA-ship or whatnot. That's all the stuff that comes before you actually become a student. So all of that happens between January 19th and basically when the program begins in the fall. Once you are already a student, you start the program, then a lot of it is, we'll let you know when the call for submissions open. So we'll say let's say this year was in October, I think beginning of October, we send an email to all the students to let them know, hey guys, these 4 scholarships need applications. Submit your application via it's called a WordSpring, that's our application portal. And then you basically the students submit their application there, and then they get reviewed and then get granted later on. So it's a combination of both. But for the admission ones, we just basically let you know how much money you'll get if you accept your offer of admission. Does that clarify your question?
Yeah, thank
Perfect. You. Okay, so we'll go to the going once questions, going twice questions, and gone. All right, no more questions, guys. Thank you very much. If you do have any more, anything comes up in your head, just send us an email, mj@torontomu.ca, and we'll be happy to answer anything that comes up later on. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elaine. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you, Tanisha. And yeah, that's it for tonight. Thank you.
Bye now. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Daniel. Bye.